Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Every leader has a journey. And with the Leaders Speak, we're trying to get to know the journey of the leader being a CISO, the things that we can learn from them. And I would like to thank you for joining us today for the Leaders Speak. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here and Preetam Sirur, who is one of the veteran of Army, and now he's into cybersecurity for over a decade and a half. He's a self-directed leader with seasoned experience in cybersecurity around infrastructure, risk management, physical security, and business continuity. So you can see that he actually has worn multiple hats in cybersecurity. He actually specializes in multiple technologies from IoT to incident response to business continuity to disaster recovery. He's a wonderful leader who's been guiding us all through along, and I know him for past couple of years. I have a lot to learn from him. So let's talk to him and get to know his journey and how exactly he does his day-to-day functions. Over to you, Preetam.
Thank you, Vandana, for having me here. And too many superlatives. No, I'm just a very simple person. Not many people probably know about the company that I work for. So Vitech is a global provider of cloud-native benefit and investment administration software. So a lot of what I do as a CISO is really based on everything that I learned in the Army. When you look at cybersecurity today, it is a classic defensive battle where you are looking at things where you have layered security. You talk about security in depth and across a front. The same thing happens when you're looking at a defensive battle across India's borders, right? So you have to protect the entire border. You have to have different tiers of protection across it. You cannot rely on just one control or one thing at the border to protect you. And that's pretty much the same here. Each of them has to be handled differently. Each of them may use different technologies, but all of them work together to provide effective defense. A lot of people talk about offensive security, right? We're talking about penetration and hacking and things of that sort. Uh, I should say, really, that is when you talk about penetration testing for a CISO, it is really offensive security for a CISO. Really, it is part of the defensive battle where you're really just testing your defenses. When you talk about response, so if there is an incident, when you talk about a response, in a defensive battle, you have something called a counterattack. So the counterattack is really closing a breach where an enemy has breached your border. Think of what happened recently on the northern borders. So these are the kind of things that you have to take as a CISO. So when you talk about the work that I do, a lot of it relates to everything that I learned in the Army. I've used that throughout my working life. Besides the work part of it, it also grooms you for leadership as going through the National Defense Academy and the Indian Military Academy basically grooms you up to be a leader. And that is essential when you are in this role.
Now, when you are a CISO, there are multiple things that you have to take care. There are multiple decisions that you have to take care. If you are allowed a free hand to make one change in the organization, what would it be to make life better for the organization?
If I had to make one change in the organization, it would be to basically make sure that everyone in the company goes through extensive security training. And that goes for each of their roles. We do always conduct security awareness and things of that sort. But when you look at each different role in the company, you may need specialized security training in those roles. You look at developers, you look at project managers, you look at solutions analysts. All of them need to understand security for what their particular role is and how their role impacts the security of the organization. A lot of developers, whatever I've seen so far, have been that most of them have no exposure to security, especially when they come out of colleges. There is almost zero cybersecurity education in colleges, I would say almost everywhere. They are not taught when they are coding to code securely. They are taught functional aspects of coding, but they're not taught at the same time that when they build those functional aspects, what do they have to do to make sure that code is secure? The same goes for testing. When you look at QA, most QA people are groomed to test for functional things, but not for non-functional uh, aspects, which security is a big part of. So when you look at that, if I really had to change one thing in an organization, that would be to make everyone trained on security.
I think that's a great point to offer. And especially if I talk about for a new CISO, what are the three advices that you would like to give? Like trainings are going to happen, but especially for a new CISO, 30-day, 60-day, 90 plan is a very important plan. And I've been reading about it, I've been learning about it, like how exactly different CISOs make a difference in their organization. So I would like to take your advice on that.
Sure. So when you talk about a 30, 60, 90-day plan, I would say the first 30 days at least. I mean, I really hate to classify into 30, 60, 90 as such in terms of a strict timeline. Very often these get merged or blurred or condensed because of work issues. But the first thing one must do is really understand the business. What is the business? Uh, what direction is the business heading? What are we looking to grow? How do we look at making security a business enabler, right? That is the first thing that I would look at. The second thing that I would look at is getting to know the people, getting to know all the teams, how they work today. What are they doing in that timeline? I mean, in that for their particular roles, what are the processes they follow? Why do we need to do this is because then that will give us the direction that we have to head in for security. What are the things that we have to do to grow? What do we have to do to uh, close gaps in the processes? Things of that sort. So those are things that I would look at in the first part of it. The next is to look at developing your risk maturity. So when you're looking at that, I'm looking at things like making sure that everyone understands what is the risk appetite of the company, what are the risk tolerances. The risk tolerances basically are then what drive your security metrics to see you're meeting the risk tolerance limits of the company. So those are what I would look at. And then I would look at the tooling and gaps that we may have from the technology perspective as to what we may need to close. So those are in broad general terms that those are things that I would do in the initial days. And then you sort of have to get your management and board to be able to fund those. So unless you explain in business terms as to why you need to do that, you will not be able to. That is why you need the budget and the return on investment of that budget. You will not be getting that budget and will not be successful at your role.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And given all those advices, there is one thing that I can actually bundle it up, that there are a lot of things that might come from the board as well. Now, board has started to give the seat to the security on the board. Still, I see that there is some lag which is there. So how do you handle that lag with the board, especially when it comes to the budget for security?
That basically is by sort of projecting your risk metrics, right? So whatever the risk tolerances are, how are you going to do that? By basically explaining threat intelligence. So what is the new threat intelligence that may impact your organization? How is that going to be handled? So identifying the KRIs for your vulnerabilities, security awareness, identity management, things of that sort that tie into your return on investment on security is what you have to explain to the board. That is essential. Otherwise, you will not get the required support.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. Thanks for sharing all the valuable insights and wisdom with us. I'm sure we have a lot to learn from you, and we will keep learning from you with all the experience that you have in multiple sectors that you are part of. Thank you so much for joining me today, Preetam.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you for having me over.
Yeah, thank you.